Good morning. I'd like to call to order Delaware County Council's agenda meeting for March 2nd, 2021. Will all please rise? We'll pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As is always our modus operandi, we accept public comment at the beginning of the meeting and the end of the meeting on Wednesday evenings meetings. Comments at the beginning of the meeting are reserved exclusively for items that are on the agenda, and then comments at the end of the meeting can be for anything that crosses one's mind. Today, because we are not voting on anything, we only accept comments at the end of the meeting. And comments can be emailed to us at publiccomment@co.delaware.pa.us or can be telephoned in to 610-891-4931. How did I forget that number? Is that right? That is right. All right, I didn't forget it. Please leave your name and your address, and it will be read into the record. Turning to agenda item number 4, this calls for the approval of the minutes of the regular meetings of February 17th, 2021. Any questions or comments from council on that? All right, agenda item number 5 will call for a COVID and vaccination update. Typically we have Dr. O'Mahony and Ms. Halt do that. I presume they are out and about trying to keep Delaware County safe. Typically they don't offer such an update during the agenda meeting, but we will look forward to hearing their update tomorrow night. Agenda item number 6, I believe Dr. Taylor is going to read a resolution on Women's History Month. Do you want to do that today, Dr. Taylor, or should we just save that for tomorrow night?
No, I think we can save it for tomorrow night, and we'll have some guests with us too.
Okay, great. Item number 7 calls for a resolution declaring March as Red Cross Month, and I believe Ms. Schaefer is going to read that into the record tomorrow night. And then agenda item number 8 calls for a resolution recognizing the police and fire dispatchers for their heroic efforts during a February 17th fire in Millbourne. And I believe Councilman Madden is going to read that tomorrow evening. Any comments from council on any of those resolutions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in, not on the resolutions, but on a request for an amendment to the agenda on behalf of county staff. It's a request that the agenda be amended to approve a motion for an interdepartmental budget transfer of $120,000 from the grant fund, that being where the CARES Act money sits, to the Park Police Department for compensation of 3 unbudgeted personnel positions.
So moved.
So we have a motion to amend the agenda. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
And we have a second. So we have a motion to amend the agenda to add this item. Any questions or comments from council on the motion to amend the agenda? All right, well, I'll offer my own comments. I know we had discussed adding a couple of positions to Park Police. And in order to do so, we needed to make sure there were sufficient monies in the budget. And so budget management has said that they would like to make this change. I think the code section is 635C1, if I'm not mistaken. It requires then council approval of that. So we will take that up tomorrow night, and I'm in favor of amending the agenda to add this. There's nothing else then. All those in favor of amending the agenda as proposed, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Ms. Coogan, will you make sure that the agenda is then amended and distributed to on our website?
Yes, I'll make sure I get the correct wording from Mr. Martin, and I will put it up on the website.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that, Mr. Martin?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, agenda item number 9 then calls for the approval to submit a grant application to the Pennsylvania Auto Theft Prevention Authority for a 2-year renewal in the amount of $672,491. And we have our esteemed district attorney, Mr. Jack Stolzheimer, here to present this. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. We're just seeking approval to once again get a grant from the Auto Theft Prevention Authority. This covers full salary of a detective, half the salary of a prosecutor and an analyst who all work downstairs on these cases. We've had this grant for over 24 years now, so we would like to continue to do this work. The Commonwealth actually gets a great value in terms of the amount and number and value of the stolen vehicles that we recover by doing this work. So we would ask for your approval to submit that grant, and I think there's a very strong chance we're going to get it if you so approve.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Stolzheimer?
No, I will only say that I am in awe of the district attorney's ability to find grant money and greatly applaud it because it increases services for the county. And if you run across anything for, say, the public defender or, the election department, will you let us know?
I certainly will. I'll tell my staff since they do all the hard work, as you know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing further, we will see you tomorrow night. Agenda item number 10 calls for an update on Delaware County's $5 vehicle registration fee. And I believe that Ms. Bierling is here. Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir. Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I'm here today to give an update on the $5 registration fee for local use. Delaware County $5 registration fee update. On February 19, 2020, Delaware County Council passed an ordinance relating to the provision of the Commonwealth's 2013 Transportation Funding Law, Act 89, which authorizes counties to add $5 to each annual PennDOT vehicle registration to fund critical county infrastructure starting June 1st, 2020. The money can only be used for the maintenance and improvements of bridges, roads, and related items. The funding will be used to improve the county's own inventory of 43 bridges, which citizens transverse on a regular basis. Delaware County is the 25th county to pass an ordinance enacting this provision, which also has been passed by neighboring counties, Bucks County, Chester County, Montgomery County, and Philadelphia. The main benefits of the new registration is it creates a steady stream of transportation funding raised by those who use the system and kept entirely within Delaware County. State law restricts the funds to roads, bridges, and signal projects, decreases the county's dependency on state and federal programs that we've been relying on for as an opportunity to obtain dollars has become harder, and provide a dedicated revenue source. The county has been working diligently to prioritize the bridge inventory over the past several months, and as a result, the county is now ready to request a $2 million transportation funding reserve for enacting the $5 vehicle registration fee. The letter requesting the approval of a project was submitted to PennDOT, has been drafted, will be sent after this approval. It's currently under review by the planning department. As of the end of 2020, the county has collected $830,650 and is working to prioritize projects to utilize these funds. The county is committed to set aside the monies to maintain the signage along the cyclist route on Baltimore Pike. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bierling. Any questions or comments from council? All right, then moving on to agenda.
Sorry, I had a little trouble with my mute button there.
Sorry.
I just, so can you give a little more detail about that last aspect that you just mentioned about the safe bicycle on routes?
Yes.
And whether this money is appropriate for alternate modes of transportation like that.
Well, the bicycle, the last thing I had mentioned, I'm not sure where, what you were talking about. The bicycle route that's along Baltimore Pike, Mr. Schaefer from planning had pointed out that some of the signs have been knocked down or taken down or whatever. And he asked that when we do this $5 fee, if we could set some money aside so these signs could be replaced, because at one point PennDOT did it and they're not doing it right now. So that's what the money would be used for. And go ahead, I'm sorry.
So we've confirmed that using that money is eligible for, alternate modes of transportation or safe bike routes on streets.
Well, yeah, it will be available for the bike, for signage on the bicycle routes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Jack, just to be clear though, that's one of many uses that this money is going to go
Oh,
toward.
sure. Sure, definitely.
I mean, it's primarily going to bridge upkeep.
Definitely going to bridge upkeep. Yes, we have three bridges on the books that we want to do, and we have another bridge project that I believe it's Bridge 12 that we've allocated for too.
So the $800,000 is what has come in since we passed this last year, about
Yes.
1 year.
The first part that came in was, I believe, $320 that come in June, and the rest of the money actually come in December. We actually get 2 deposits a year, one in June and one in December.
So it sounds like it will probably be around $1 million a year if we stay at that rate.
No,
I would
2
think
million.
so. I think it might be a little bit more than that, but
Okay.
I believe the stated figure we might get close to 2 million.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes, $1 million a year.
but part of the problem is I believe PennDOT's looking at possibly a $50 million deficit because of COVID. People aren't driving as much, so therefore the fuel tax isn't coming in as much, and a couple other things that are going on. So that's starting to deplete, if you will.
Just to clarify, so the reason why it was short of the million, so, okay, let's back up. So this went into effect right before the midpoint of last year.
Yes.
So as Jack said, we got basically nothing for the first half of the year, and
That's
then
correct.
we got about $800,000 for the second half. Now, typically we would expect there to be about $1 million per 6 months, but because of the fact that the state gave an allowance on registration during COVID, a lot of people didn't get their vehicles re-registered in 2020. There was a delay on that. So in 2021, we should expect there to be about $1 million every 6 months.
And Mr. Madden, can you remind me again what the deal was with the state matching these funds?
So historically, in order to incentivize counties to sign up for the $5 fee for local use, what they did was they told counties that participated that the state would match up to the first $2 million of planned bridge work through this $5 fee. And that deal actually expired a couple of years ago. But in discussions with PennDOT, they made an exception to allow us to take advantage of that as well if we were to pass it within 2020, which we did. So that will take the form of an extra project or projects, but most likely one project to be added to the TIP, which is the state's plan for infrastructure throughout the state, specifically for Delaware County. And so there are a couple of projects that are considered and are up for consideration to ask PennDOT to add, but I don't think we've yet sort of determined which one is going to be added. But the point is, this was an opportunity for our $5 fees to be coming back to us in a 100, 200 cents on the dollar type of way.
Yeah, I would add 2 things just for council to consider as we move forward. One is I think there are advocacy opportunities going forward, certainly at the federal level, to address the declining fuels tax, which is, excuse me, liquid fuels tax, which has historically funded a lot of the road repairs and bridge repairs. And that is, I think it has sunk in on Congress that the gas tax is declining because fewer miles are being driven and because people are switching to more fuel efficient cars. There are a few proposals floating around the federal government to either supplement or replace the gas tax with sort of a miles driven kind of a thing. I believe the state of Pennsylvania is similarly looking at stuff like that, and it might be something where we want to advocate for that kind of legislation. I don't know that there's a particular solution that we should adopt, but we definitely want those funds that are supposed to be trickling down to increase. And right now they are decreasing. I think the other thing that we should be aware of is the only department or the only committee so far in the House in Harrisburg, in the federal government, that have talked about restoring earmarks relates to transportation and infrastructure. So again, that may be another source of funding moving forward.
All right. Anything further on agenda item number 10? All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 11, and we have Mr. Beerling here to present that.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of council. I'm here today to ask for the approval of reimbursement agreement number R21060007 between the County of Delaware and PennDOT, 700 Gerds Road, King of Prussia, PA 19406, subject to the solicitor's approval. Establishing a maximum reimbursement at $3,718,395 for the construction phase required for New Avenue Bridge over Chester Creek replacement, County Bridge number 7, subject to the solicitor's approval. This is bridge number 7 located in Aston Township on New Road. The bridge is 54 feet in length, 24 feet in width. It was built in 1931. The total cost for this bridge is 80% federal funds of $3,479,920, 15% state funds of $652,350, and 5% liquid fuels money for the county, which is $217,450, for a total of $4,349,000 for the bridge to be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on agenda item number 11? All right. Thank you, Mr. Beerling.
Thank you, sir. See you tomorrow night.
Indeed. Moving on to agenda item number 12. This calls for the approval of agreements, contracts, amendments with the services for the aging providers of services, COSA, as per the attached list. And I believe we have Ms. Nicolardi here to present this. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and members of council. I am here today to request budget amendments for 7 program-funded contracts. Our contract and fiscal year runs from July through June, and these amendments are for this current contract period. COSA has unanticipated excess block grant funds due to receiving FFCRA and CARES funding for this fiscal year. As such, these one-time expenditures are able to be funded through our block grant funds. Additionally, each of our 8 COSA-sponsored senior centers are receiving $4,938 from the Pennsylvania Department of Aging, with the funding coming through COSA to those centers. Specifically, the budget modifications include $28,000 to Marikey for mental health counseling. Marikey has requested the funds due to not being able to do third-party billing. They hired an MSW this year rather than an LCSW, and are not able to provide some of the third-party billing. And we definitely wanted to continue with counseling, especially during all of the COVID that has been going on, and that they are able to do that over the phone with our seniors. $5,000 to Senior Community Services for the PRIZE, a health insurance counseling program. This program helps seniors navigate through Medicare and is always very helpful during the open enrollment period. The funding for this will be used to purchase cell phones, hotspots for the volunteers who have been using them. $25,000 to Senior Community Services to eliminate the waiting list for consumers needing various equipment and supplies such as stair glides and personal emergency response systems. $53,938 to Mainline Senior Services for the Wayne Senior Center to renovate their office, purchase a commercial freezer, upgrade their signage, purchase iPads, tablets, and hotspots, and various programming materials to continue to provide virtual and, when able, outdoor programming. $183,912 to Senior Community Services for their 4 senior centers: the Chester Senior Center, the Good Neighbor Senior Center in Sharon Hill, the Friendship Circle Senior Center in Darby, and the Schoolhouse Senior Center in Folsom. The money will be used to provide one-time upgrades to each of the senior centers. In addition, part of that money also includes $72,600 to pay for home delivered meal drivers. Prior to the pandemic, we had seniors who were doing the volunteer driving to deliver meals to the seniors. We quickly realized it wasn't safe for all the senior volunteers and had to switch to having some paid drivers to make sure that the meals were getting out to our seniors. $46,668 to Surrey Services for seniors for their senior centers in Media and Havertown. In addition to a new commercial freezer and portable screens, the majority of their funding has been requested to develop a Surrey virtual campus that will continue to operate after the pandemic, reaching additional seniors who choose to stay home and or homebound, and $17,279 to Upper Darby Township for the Upper Darby Senior Center to purchase a new freezer, upgrade their reception desk, making it handicapped accessible, as well as purchasing webcams and laptops for virtual programming.
Thank you, Ms. Nicolardi. Any questions or comments on agenda item number 12?
This is just a logistic question. I can't find the attached list that's referred to in our packet, and I'm not sure whether I just didn't get it or whether, but I think that you're reading from a list, and could you reshare that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm not sure if everyone else saw the list.
And Councilwoman Schaefer, my apologies. I did not have the list back from the budget department that was reviewing those, and I did send you the list yesterday.
Okay. All
so
right.
I got it back. They okayed it yesterday, and that's what happened.
Then scratch that. I will look in my email from Anne to see. That did not make it in my packet. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on agenda item number 12? All right, we'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. All right, moving on to agenda item number 13. This calls for the approval of an extension for a lease agreement through March 31st, 2021 between the County of Delaware and Crozer Chester Medical Center dated July 1, 2014 for the purpose of operating acute care geriatric psychiatric facility in 11,420 square feet of building number 5 at a monthly rate of $60,382. The lease cost includes square footage costs and an annual fixed cost for services. And I believe we have Ms. Sweeney here to present this. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. How are you? Good
Thanks.
morning, Council and Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request agenda approval for item number 13. It's for a 1-month extension of our current lease with Crozer Chester Medical Center. The lease has been in effect since 2014 for the rental of our building 5 Northwest. And that's where Rejuvenations, which is Crozer's Jerry Psych unit, resides. This extension is requested so both parties can work in good faith towards a long-term renewal. The lease is at a monthly rate of approximately $60,382. The total includes the square footage rental of 11,420 square feet with a fixed monthly service expense for services such as the police, environmental services, maintenance, utilities, and dietary service.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? All right. Well, I'm curious as to how the negotiation's going, but probably not a good idea to talk about that in public meeting.
Yes.
But we'll be eager to hear what happens as things go forward.
Hopefully well. Hopefully well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. All right, moving on to agenda item number 14. This calls for the approval to accept a grant from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency for the term January 1, 2021 through the end of December 2022 in the amount of $322,264. And who do we have here? We have Ms. DiMatteo here to present agenda item number 14. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Delaware County Juvenile Court and Probation Services seeks council's approval today to accept a grant renewal in the amount of $322,264 for the 2-year term of January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. The grant allows us to add an additional full-time position for a total of 3 victim liaisons. The funding further provides for the use of temporary staff as needed and general operating expenses in servicing victims of juvenile offenders. This particular unit served approximately 2,000 victims last year. A little bit higher than normal, but expected with the circumstances being what they were with COVID. We provide notifications to victims upon filing of juvenile cases. We support and assist the victim throughout the duration of the juvenile offender's case. We accompany the victim to proceedings, assist and support them either directly or through referrals to other agencies within the county to meet their specific needs. Additionally, we help them prepare and present their impact statement to the court on each case, ensuring that they are able to be present both in thought and action during each phase of the case. Where the victim has a voice and they are heard, they heal.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on agenda item number 14? All right, well, it sounds like a great program. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
And moving on to agenda item number 15, this calls for the approval of agreements, contracts, and amendments with the human services providers of services as per the attached list. And I believe we have Ms. Garrison here to present this. Good morning.
Good morning. The first request I have is to amend the current contract Human Services, or Adult and Family Services Division has with Community Action. If council remembers, I believe it was 2 sessions ago, council approved the acceptance of the opioid housing grant from the state, and there were additional monies that were transferred in that grant for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. This would allow those funds of $141,528 to go through to Community Action to continue their opioid housing program they have with individuals that are currently in the program. The individuals coming in now will be served through Community Action, but under a contract with the Drug and Alcohol Office and Human Services. The next request is to amend our current contract between our Human Services Children and Youth and Premier Biotech for drug testing. This is to add additional panels to the tests that are currently under contract, as well as to make the contract an NA overall value, because depending on how many individuals come through the system, through juvenile court, as well as through children and youth, the amount spent on an annual basis will vary. The next request to amend the current contract with Community Action for the Following Home program, and this is in the amount of $303,977. This is also for the opioid use housing individuals, persons that are involved with the criminal justice system as well. The grant from the state only allows individuals to receive subsidies for 6 months. That's not always sufficient for individuals to get back on their feet. So this is reinvestment funds, and this will allow those individuals to stay in the program longer and go beyond the 6-month deadline that the state has set if necessary. The next request is also for reinvestment monies. This is for the homeless outreach program through Horizon House. So if approved, this contract would pass through $577,500 of reinvestment funds to Horizon House to continue to implement their homeless outreach for the street homeless in the county, with the intent to hopefully get them into some type of shelter, hotel program, or into case management so they can no longer be homeless and have stable housing. And finally, the last request is to enter into agreement with the 3 listed early learning resource center professionals for the subsidized daycare program in the county.
Can I ask, is the opioid related housing programs, are they placement programs or
no? A lot of it's rent assistance and case management. A lot of times, unfortunately, individuals, as we know, that come through the criminal justice system, a lot of landlords won't rent directly to them. So we have master leasing, which is where the provider actually holds the lease for the property and then assists in the payment of rent. And that way the individual can live in the property, but the lease is held by another, or is held by their agency, as also as case management services as well around how to continue to have stable housing.
So is the Community Action Agency the lessor?
Yes.
Or lessee?
Yes.
Okay.
In some cases, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Garrison, is the Horizon House outreach program, that's our outreach that we're doing in 69th Street?
Yes, that is the current program that was put out for request for proposal, and then they were the chosen provider, and that contract was approved by council. This just supplements the money that we received for adult and family services through our human services block grant monies. These are additional funds because there's obviously a need greater than the funding we currently have.
Okay, and then are they doing outreach 24 hours or is it just the night team?
I believe at this point they're still trying to ramp their team up.
Okay.
So once they get the entire team, then they'll be able to go out more. Right now, they are targeting days which are below, I want to say 40 degrees. I'll double check that for tomorrow, but they are targeting them colder nights in Upper Darby as well as in other places throughout the county.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on agenda item number 15? All right, then we'll move on to agenda item number 16, which calls for the approval of an emergency rental assistance program with funds received under the federal 2021 Consolidated Appropriations Act and Pennsylvania Act 1 of 2021. And we have a dream team of sorts presenting this with Ms. Garrison, Mr. Martin, and Mr. Lichtenstein. So I'm not sure who wants to kick things off here.
Since Ms. Garrison hesitated, I'll jump in and indicate that the matter before council is essentially a two-part approval. Let me take a half step back. As we have presented to council and to the public previously, there are funds which have been and will be made available to the county for establishment of an emergency rental assistance program. Those funds, one segment came directly from the federal government. A second segment was our federal funds directed through the state government. The first is $17 million. The second is approximately, or is $20 million. So we have a total of $37 million, which have the same purpose, rent relief, slightly different restrictions and criteria established within the program. So a group which include the folks who will speak to you this morning and others have been working to establish this program on an expedited basis because obviously the funds are needed in the community, plus the programs have been established so that recipient counties are required to expend the majority of the funds by date specified. In the case of the state program, the end of August. In the case of the federal program, the end of September. So what we have to be reviewed tomorrow night at council is a two-part approval. First of all, it is a contract with a company named Capital Access, which is being recommended by this group after a competitive process as being the entity which will come in and essentially run the program under the guidance of county staff. And that is a contract for the amount of $2,500,000. The second segment of the requested approval from council is to authorize the executive director to approve transfer of program funds in accordance with the Treasury and Commonwealth requirements and also pursuant to program guidelines, which will be recommended by Capital Access, reviewed by the interdepartmental staff, which has put together the program, and then needs to be approved by the executive director pursuant to this approval. To repeat some things that I think we've touched on within the last couple meetings, the program allows for amounts to be utilized out of the funds for county administration. And those target percentages, maximums, are 10% for the federal monies, 5% for the state monies. Since there's a little bit more state money than there is federal money, the blended number is somewhere slightly north of 7% of the overall $37 million can be utilized for program administration. The amount proposed to be paid to Capital Access is the significant majority of funds that would be spent on administration of this program, but we have budgeted for the balance for other expenses which will be incurred by the county in administrating the program. So there will not be impingement upon the county budget except as the expenses come out of this program. I'll mention, as I did before, we're coordinating with the courts because we will provide certain precedent to landlords and tenants who are mixed up in the legal system because there are ongoing eviction or ejectment proceedings, and that those proceedings were in place before January 31 when this program became public. So we're coordinating with the courts. There will be, and I'll turn it over to Sandy. She can talk about sort of how she would see this rolling out over the next month and into April.
Thank you. We are looking at an additional having, if approved, having Capital Access to the online application of the program, realizing that not everybody has access to smartphones and online capabilities. We, if approved, would like to have staff located in Human Services as well as in the county's office in Eddystone. We'd like to use temporary staff to do that, to assist individuals that are coming into the office to apply in person. Additionally, I have had preliminary conversations with Multicultural Family Services and the Delaware County, well, through them with the Delaware County Immigrant Coalition, to find out how we can best serve those populations as well, to get some ideas on how we can reach them and make sure the message is getting out there. We have also scheduled at the next meeting with our internal team, we have included public relations as well to make sure we're getting the message out to individuals in the community. The other thought that our office has had and our group had had was to target some of the food pickup days that they have. I know there's a large one, I believe it's weekly still in Upper Darby, to have staff on site there so individuals that are coming in to pick up food can also, if they need, apply for rental assistance.
Again, and I'm repeating from prior meetings, but so council is reminded, the program, we've attached to the material circulated with this agenda item, a summary that Ms. Garrison prepared, a report that was prepared for us by Whit O'Brien, which does a needs analysis of the county's requirements for this program based on sort of some macro level assessments of unemployment levels and the numbers of rental units within certain targeted rental levels. And then also attached to this is a summary prepared by Capital Access describing their implementation of the program. The program, again, is focused on individuals whose adjusted median income is, in the first instance, at 50% or less than the median for the county. And then we could also provide assistance to those who are at 80% or less. So we will be trying to prioritize the most economically challenged folks, but then there's an opportunity to also provide service to folks who are still below the average, but perhaps not struggling as much as that first segment. And then, John, if I'm right, we can also provide assistance to individuals who have had 3 months or more of unemployment resulting from the COVID crisis.
I think that's wrapped up in the basic eligibility.
Okay, so
there's certain
separate.
Correct. Correct.
Can I ask a question about that? I understood that this round of funding was not tied as much to, an income eligibility test. I mean, and I'll just tell you what my concern is that you've got people who, like, take somebody who might be newly out of school or college who had a reasonably good job for a year or two, loses their job due to COVID. They've got a high amount of student debt and other things. They're renting a property and they're out. So they can demonstrate that currently they've had the 3 months of no job, but they, looking at them in terms of their income over the past year, if you looked at their income, they would not meet those income eligibility tests. Are we not able to help them? Or is the 3 months of income loss independent of the other requirements?
There's currently guidance from Treasury, and we're working through it, that allows a combination of looking at either 2020 household income or current monthly income. So there is an ability to look at current income. Again, there's extensive Treasury guidance on that, and we're still looking through that. The other thing which the Treasury guidance has provided, and again, we're still absorbing it, is there is some ability to rely on self-certification for people who are in the cash economy or otherwise wouldn't have pay stubs or tax returns or other ways to prove current income. So Treasury is, trying to provide as much flexibility as they can right now to expand the program.
Okay, I would just want to make it clear that the county has no desire to be any more restrictive than we have to be, because people, I mean, a family who becomes homeless, I don't care if they were in an apartment or a house that cost them $2,000 a month, or an apartment or a house that cost them $750 a month. If they're homeless, they're homeless. And that's a problem for the county if they don't have the income. So I would encourage us to look at that and make sure that we're not overly restrictive. The other thing that's come up, and it's going to be more of an issue, we know from recent news reports and other things, is the ability to use these funds to help people dealing with utility shutoff notices, because maybe they've been paying their rent, but they haven't been paying their electric bill or their gas bill or whatever. Is that built into this program as well?
Yeah, yes, it is. It's built into the program as to renters. So the funds can be used to provide support to renters who are behind on utility bills, but there's not an overlap on utility bills to someone who's in an ownership position in their house.
Okay, and my last question is, has anyone looked into doing outreach either with realtors who manage or Chamber of Commerce connections with people who, property management folks, because they may know if they've got tenants in trouble and would rather see them getting the assistance than having, especially if they're otherwise a good tenant. It's expensive for them to get rid of people. So I'm just wondering if there's been any plan to incorporate them into the outreach.
It is part of the overall plan for publicity of the program. At this point, it hasn't started yet because we don't want to prematurely trigger the calls because the system is not in place yet to handle the calls.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Another place of outreach has been to legal aid. A lot of our tenants who are in trouble are relying upon legal aid for representation. So we've made contact with them, and we're going to incorporate that avenue into identifying potential beneficiaries.
One thing to add to that, the legislation specifically provides for the ability for landlords to apply on behalf of tenants. The tenants will have to acknowledge the application, but the system will allow either a tenant or a landlord to initiate.
And
couple of questions.
Again, the concept here will be when landlords receive these funds, they will be required to acknowledge that the funds are received in full payment for the back rent in total. The back rent, any late fees, any penalties, and the premise here is that these are funds being expended to avoid disruption to people's lives. So it doesn't make any sense to make the payment and then have them continue to press for either an additional payment directly from the tenant or perhaps proceed with eviction. There is also the opportunity for prospective payments, for forward payments, up to a maximum of 3 months. And that will need to be assessed because, again, the requirements we'll have in the county are such that these funds will be exhausted at some point. So we will be together assessing whether that 3 months in advance kicks in automatically or kicks in on a case-by-case basis.
I have a couple questions. First, again, this is just a logistics, but I could not find anywhere in my packet the enclosure from Capital Access. Was that sent separately, or there's reference to Capital Access having a memo or some sort of synopsis of the program, and I didn't see it in the packet.
John or Ann?
I'll defer to Ann. I
sent what was given to me.
right, that may have been with the materials that were, was that included separately, Ann, yesterday?
No, that was sent,
We'll make-
I sent what John gave me on Friday.
So we got an enclosure from Widow Bryan, but we nothing from Capital Access.
All right, we'll make sure that you get it immediately following this meeting.
Okay, thank you. And Capital Access, I tried to do a little research on my own because but I couldn't really, the only company I found was out in California. Can you just tell us a little bit about Capital Access and how we ended up with them?
I'll jump in and John or Ms. Garrison can also jump in. You know, we put out feelers back in early February for companies who had engaged in this kind of work in terms of administrating HUD or CDBG programs for state or local governments, identified 4 or 5 and then solicited proposals. Capital Access was on that list. They're based in Philadelphia with offices in several other cities elsewhere in the county. We followed up with their references. We followed up with speaking to individuals at senior levels in Philadelphia city government, spoke to somebody in South Carolina, spoke to somebody in Florida, and received strong references regarding similar work. Now, obviously, this specific work is unique because it's the first instance of this program rolling out. So nobody has done this particular program before, but they have done similar programs, and we've received positive references about them. And some of that background information, I'm sorry, Ms. Schaefer, will be included in what we had hoped you would have seen by now.
And this might be in there too. Have they committed a certain number of employees towards this project?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll wait until I see that because probably a lot of my questions are answered in that insert. But one question I had, a couple of things about the Widow Bryan analysis. You know, that somewhere in there they made the assumption that most of these or the average of these claims or requests would be, I think it was 7 or 8 months. I can't remember what the number was, but I think that you're eligible, the program would cover a year of rent, right?
Correct. It goes back to March 15th of 2020.
Right. So I found that perplexing that there wouldn't be, you know, if someone's in trouble with rent, it probably would be more than 6 or 7 months.
Well, that was identified as an average, not as a cap on the ability.
That needs analysis was not meant to be a plan. That was meant to be a look at some of the macroeconomic data and based on certain assumptions, how much could the county expect to spend? And I think it comes to the conclusion that even with some very conservative assumptions, like only 7 or 8 months, there is more than enough demand for all 37 million. So it wasn't meant to be a precise calculation of how many households will be.
Right.
It was meant to be a more general, you know, look at what the need is in the county and whether or not there's demand for $37 million of funds. And it came up with the answer that yes, clearly there is.
Yes. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I also saw in there reference to having everything expended by the 31st of December, but that doesn't comport with the deadlines. So is that?
Well, the deadlines that we have referenced, which are late August, end of August for state program, end of September for the federal program, are not requirements that all the money be out the door, but rather that those are requirements that specified amounts. 75%, John?
65%.
Okay.
And they also look at, especially for the state program, look at obligated amounts.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that you have contracts going out through December, but you have it obligated as of that date.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then it would continue. The significance of those amounts and those dates is that if the targets are not met, there is a risk that both the federal and state governments could claw back the unspent amounts. And on the other hand, if they are met, there is some possibility that the amounts clawed back from other jurisdictions could be distributed to the successful county programs to provide more money to benefit the successful jurisdictions.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And then another question I had, again, in the Wood O'Brien, it breaks down the administrative allotment that we're allowed to administration, which I guess would go to capital access, and then housing stability services. Would that be county services? What is the housing stability services?
I'll defer to Ms. Garrison.
Thank you. A lot of it's what we're doing now is the case management. It's the helping the individuals maintain their residence, what they need to know, as far as paying bills and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think with this population, my instinct is, these were people that probably were paying their rent up to this point. Absent COVID, they would still be paying their rent. So I don't know how much assistance they need, but we do have the assistance with various county agencies with whom we currently contract, like Community Action and some other ones through Adult and Family Services Department. If we need additional resources, we can look to doing that as well.
So I understand that if we end up using those services, they could be reimbursed by this program.
Yes.
That allotment. Okay. Okay.
So I think there's a maximum, John, is it like 9% is a combination of the admin and the housing stability? There's a maximum cap.
Yeah, it's one of the differences between the two programs. The Treasury, the money we have directly from Treasury is a flat 10% cap on any combination of admin and housing stability. The state money is 9.09%, but only up to 5% can be administrative costs. And the additional 4.09% can also be for housing stability services.
Okay.
I had one other thought, and I apologize. I'd forgotten to mention it. It was actually at the top of my list. But that is, given the fact that we are delegating authority with this motion, are delegating authority to the executive director, and we don't expressly reference the amounts in the program, is it possible to amend the language of the approval to either reference a summary of distribution amounts or percentages and a total cap on the amount that Mr. Lazarus has discretion over in accordance with some defined attachment, or to put a cap in the amount of this? I think we all know what we're talking about, but this is if you just read the resolution, it's very, very open-ended. And I think it's incumbent upon us to document the funds over which we are giving him discretion.
Could I suggest that John and I work on clarifying language within the resolution, or perhaps providing some kind of an attachment, and share that with council between now and tomorrow evening. And if somebody in council wanted to propose that as an amendment to the motion, they could do that tomorrow night.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I apologize. I really should have brought that particular comment up earlier, but I've been somewhat distracted this last week. And I didn't get a chance to bring that to your attention, Mr. Martin, because it's really just a housekeeping matter that the documentation be clear and that we reference the source of funds and the caps on the amounts, because it is a very open-ended delegation of authority. Appropriate, I think, because it's going to be much easier for Mr. Lazarus to be the person signing off on this in accordance with the program. But I'd rather be explicit about where his discretion lies.
Okay.
Well, I want to just say, I look forward to seeing the information from Capital Asset, is that what, Access? I just want to note, this is a pretty colossal effort. That pushing out $37 million in 10 months, 9 months, actually, and they're pretty small, going to be pretty small increment, grants. And just by frame of reference, what our Commerce Center has done in the last year with the Delco Strong programs, that's just an extraordinary amount of administration. And the contract reflects that $2.5 million for a 10-month contract. It's a pretty big contract. So I just have a little bit of a apprehension, and I want to make sure that we are completely comfortable with the services that are being put towards this, because that level of administration of that amount of money in this short period of time to a fractured audience of applicants, this is colossal. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I would say one other thing, and then I'll be done because we got other things to cover. But first of all, it may be that if the budget accommodates it, there might be reason to consider getting a resource to a local resource to handle outreach. In addition to, because the success of this program is going to depend on our ability to make sure that all of the people who come into contact with folks who can use this service are aware of the program and are directing people there. I mean, to me, that's one of the reasons programs fail, and one of the reasons why when people say who helps with this stuff, and it takes me on county council several phone calls to figure out who to go to, that's a problem. And we've got 30 some million dollars to distribute to make sure that our rental tax base remains strong and that people remain in housing. That's a lot to deal with, and we want to make sure that we are exhausting every avenue. And I think, frankly, our public relations department is overstretched, and I don't know that a contractor who's sitting on the West Coast, they're going to be very skilled at, I'm sure, administering the program, but may not be able to do outreach. So that's just something I put out there. And I would say that, as Mr. Martin very appropriately noted, when we talked about utilities, this is really all linked to the rental market and doesn't provide any assistance for people who are falling behind on their mortgages and their property taxes and, their utilities where they're owner occupied, or at least owner occupied along with the bank. Some of the people who've been affected by COVID have also been affected potentially adversely by our reassessment, because it's not neutral as to any given taxpayer. It's neutral as to what the municipalities can collect. So I think that, the next step, once this is sort of up and running with the funds that are dedicated to this, that we've received and are limited to this, is to really talk about a more comprehensive emergency housing program that can take into account owner occupied as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on agenda item number 16? Thank you, Ms. Garrison, Mr. Lichtenstein, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 17. This calls for the approval to advertise for a request for proposals to obtain an operator for the county's medical assistance transportation program. And I believe Mr. Lazarus is going to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Council is committed to ensuring that we get best value and high quality services in all areas. The agreement with Community Transit for medical assistance transportation program services is coming up to an annual renewal. And as part of discussions with council, the county would like to ensure that we are consistent with getting best value for the services provided. In reviewing the contract and having discussions with Mr. Martin, we were able to test the market, if you will, through an RFP without terminating the current agreement. The agreement allows us an unequivocal and right to terminate with 60 days notice without cause. So, and looking for council's approval to advertise, I'd like to be able to present options to council for providing this important service. The service is funded almost entirely by federal and state funds with a very small local match. That doesn't relieve us, though, as council said many times, of the obligation to make sure those funds are spent wisely. So this is the opportunity to test the market, if you will, to see if we can improve the level of service provided in a cost-effective manner.
I did have one question about this. If I'm thinking of the right contract, I know Dr. Taylor has had some conversations with PennDOT regarding additional resources that the state can provide at times, but they have in the past provided them only to county-owned, I guess, transportation plans. So, you know, we need to take on one more service right now. Like, we need a hole in the head. You know, at this particular time, we've already got the really intense effort that's going to be in place to deal with the prison. But my question is, are we basically limiting tax dollars by looking at going outside for, I mean, are we somehow going to wind up costing ourselves money? Am I thinking of the right contractor?
One of the options that I raised in the communication sent to council was to do a separate estimate at the same time to pull the operation in-house in some form as a county entity. What I'm aware of is the state providing funds for a new facility, primarily at their cost, but they will only do that with a governmental entity. If that's what you're referring to, I have reached out to PennDOT to discuss that matter further. So I think we can do it in parallel, very similar to competitive insourcing or outsourcing at the governmental level, to see if it makes sense to either do this continually, or to continue to do this using the approach of a separate entity, or to do it under some sort of county umbrella.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council on agenda item number 17? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 18, which calls for the approval to advertise for bids to deliver and pick up voting equipment and PPE kits to polling locations for the year 2021 in the primary and general elections. And I believe we have Mr. Savage here to present this. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of council. This is a standard bid. I think last year, I think it used to be a multi-year bid, and then last year it was determined it had to be an annual bid for some reason. So the bid is for the delivery and pickup of the voting equipment, and we added this year the PPE kits, and we added the only caveat being we added, if necessary, language for the November election, because there's no way to know in March what our situation will be in November.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Savage?
No, my only question is, he was supposed to also put forward a motion to supply kilts to all of the election warehouse staff, because there was some celebration of some Scottish rite, and I am disappointed not to see that on the agenda. But because I live to see Mr. Savage and his staff in kilts at the next election. But that's just a by the way.
No comment.
Wise man, Mr. Savage. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Savage on agenda item number 18? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Turning to agenda item number 19, this calls for the approval of annual software license and support renewal with Hart InterCivic for the term January 1, 2021 to January 31st, 2022, in an amount not to exceed $275,101. I don't know who is actually presenting this, and are those dates correct? Is it actually a 13-month contract?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Council. The invoices from Hart InterCivic, who is the contractor, do list that they are from January 1st of 2021 to January 31st of 2022.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And good morning, Ms. Hagan.
Good morning. As you said, yes, I'm asking for council's approval of the contract. It's on two different invoices due to the nature of when we purchased the equipment. The first invoice is for the contractual purchase when we bought the new system at the end of 2019 for the voting services. And then a second one when we added additional equipment with the enactment of Act 77. And so the two invoices into total come to the $275,101.
And this is, I mean, this is clearly a sole source in that we need to go back to our manufacturer for this.
Exactly, yes.
And I know you did an extremely thorough analysis when the county, it wasn't us, but when the county chose to go to Hart. And I believe one of the factors you looked at was the ongoing support costs. Isn't that correct? Wasn't that?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Thank you. And this is consistent with what they had represented. I mean, it's definitely not materially different from what they had represented. I mean, apart from the added equipment that the costs would be.
Yes, and I believe after the first year, we could see increases by 2 to 4%, which is something we saw with Hart when we had them as our ballot printing services prior to going with the Hart system. They printed our by mail components, so that would be something to expect in the future years, but not unheard of as far as a percent.
I mean, and it was clearly, I mean, something you probably did a comparable analysis with the other, the competitive vendors when you went with Hart, and you're not, I'm just saying you're not seeing like a huge spike or anything. You're seeing what you would anticipated increases.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on agenda item number 19? All right, hearing none, we will move along. Thank you, Ms. Hagan.
All right. Thank you all. Stay well.
Thanks. Agenda item number 20 calls for the approval of Central Tax Collection Department's request for refunds. Mr. Martin, anything of interest?
There are two refunds this cycle totaling $413.34.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Martin? All right, moving on to agenda item number 21. This calls for the request by the Controller's Office for the payment of current bills. Any questions or comments from council on this agenda item? Agenda item number 22 calls for communications from the Executive Director, Mr. Lazarus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be forwarding communication on some costs related to construction of the Yaden facility, mostly due with the electrical contractor that were done under emergency authorization that I need to forward to council.
All right, thank you. We have agenda item number 23, the solicitor's report. Mr. Martin.
Tomorrow evening, I'll be seeking approval to file 2 consents for adoptions with the Ordinance Court.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Martin? All right, agenda item number 24 calls for public comment. Ms. Ruther, have you been able to discern whether or not we've gotten any comments in this morning? Oh, you're on mute.
I am looking at the public comment inbox and it does not appear, let's see. We do have some comments received since our last meeting. Let me just double check. One was received on 2/24/2021. It is from Eve Mary at 407 Meeting House Lane, Upper Providence Township. Thank you for taking my public comment for the March 2nd meeting. On Monday, February 22nd, 2021, the Chester County Health Department announced new relaxed restrictions for K-12 schools. Already, multiple Delaware County school districts have announced plans to return to full-time in-person learning at less than 6 feet of social distancing. As you know, most teachers, childcare providers, and school staff do not fall into the 1A category for priority vaccination for COVID-19, and we seem to be nowhere near vaccinating category 1B essential workers. Fully opening the schools now has the potential to create a situation where classrooms are no longer reduced in size, and teachers and staff may be at higher risk for exposure and illness. On Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021, the City of Philadelphia announced a partnership with Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to vaccinate all teachers, staff, and childcare providers within the City of Philadelphia through pop-up vaccination clinics. I am writing to request that Delaware County formally reach out to CHOP and request a partner to bring pop-up vaccination clinics to Delaware County in order to prioritize vaccination of teachers, school staff, and childcare providers. CHOP has satellite facilities in Media, Drexel Hill, Springfield, Glen Mills, Broomall, and Haverford. Delaware County School or county facilities could also be utilized for this purpose. I understand that vaccine supply is currently an issue. However, supply should no longer be an issue in the coming weeks, and we should prepare now to prioritize vaccination of our school personnel at the earliest possible opportunity. If volunteers are needed to make such a venture successful, I would personally volunteer, and I'm sure many other parents would as well. As our school communities come together to prioritize children's learning and mental health, the county must also do everything possible to prioritize the health and safety of teachers, staff, and childcare providers that educate and nurture our children. I hope the county can find a solution to ensure that all educators, school staff, and childcare providers who wish to be vaccinated against COVID-19 are able to do so as quickly as possible. Thank you for your consideration. There are probably other people in this that would be qualified to say something.
I guess I'll just comment first. So for this, CHOP is getting their vaccine supply from the City of Philadelphia, which gets theirs directly from the federal government. And the rest of the state is getting our vaccine supply from the state itself. The county does have a plan in place to vaccinate our teachers, and we've been working with our school districts to put this plan in place. We need about 25,000 vaccines in order to make the plan work. And so we do have a plan. We're ready to go. We have all the volunteers. We have everyone trained. We have the locations we need. We just need the vaccine. So as you said, we're hoping in the coming weeks that vaccine supply will become available. And when it does, we will be able to vaccinate our teachers.
But I'd just also add, I speaking only for myself, but I know I've heard other members of council express similarly. I agree with the general sentiment that teachers should be prioritized, teachers and childcare workers, and we have expressed that repeatedly to the state. But unfortunately, we need to play by their rules in terms of who falls into Category 1A, who gets the few vaccine doses that we've been receiving. We have to go by the guidelines of 1A. Otherwise, the few vaccine doses that we're getting may be put in jeopardy.
Yeah, I think that is just to clarify for Ms. Maneri and or Ms. Maeri. I'm sorry, there's no N. We are subject to the 1A restrictions. The City of Philadelphia is not. It is its own vaccine jurisdiction and gets its allocation directly from the federal government. They actually prioritized. They did not go to the 65 and under or the 65 and over regime that the CDC and the state had adopted, nor did they necessarily expand it to the same list of people with pre-existing health conditions. They did prioritize essential workers, including teachers and childcare, in a way that we really cannot do. So, but that does not mean that we aren't tremendously supportive of certainly anybody who is working in a school who is 1A needs to get vaccinated. And I'm sure that will be something we're going to be trying to do at the county and trying to prioritize that. But we unfortunately don't have as much flexibility as the City of Philadelphia has in our prioritization.
I'll just add, I want to underscore that council has been advocating, or some of us have been advocating, to move teachers into 1A, teachers and school employees. And I want our residents to know that our state delegation, our representatives and our state senators have also been really advocating hard for this on both sides of the aisle. This is sort of a universal issue that we would like to see our health department consider teachers and school employees as part of 1A.
Yeah, and as well as childcare workers, which I think this correspondent, this commentator mentioned, they're also really important. And it has not gone unnoticed on us that they're not just important because of the impact on our children, which is paramount, but they have, there's a related area of importance, which is to our economy, because if parents are, supervising kids at home, if they don't have daycare or schools to go to, in our world of single parents and dual income households, it becomes really difficult for the economy to function on all cylinders. So we're acutely aware of that too. But thank you for the thoughtful comment, and that's.
I guess I'll just offer my own perspective is that I don't know whether Ms. Ruther intended to suggest this, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it is not necessary that all teachers be vaccinated in order for our schools to return to in-person. Ideally, we would be able to do that. We could move more people into 1A, which would just mean that instead of having 225,000 people in 1A, we'd have 260,000 people in 1A. And when we're getting vaccine in as such a little amount as we get, it's all sort of academic. I would agree with the commenter's perspective that, and Ms. Taylor spoke to this, that we do have a plan in place such that when we do get more vaccines, yes, by all means, teachers should be prioritized and childcare workers should be prioritized. But simply moving them into 1A, I don't think would do us a whole lot of good right now. And as we sit here right now, it's tough to say whether should a 70-year-old get vaccine or a 35-year-old healthy teacher. They're difficult decisions. Ideally, we don't have to make that decision, right? Ideally, we have enough vaccine for everybody to get vaccinated. But right now, we don't have enough vaccine. And as others have commented, if we do not follow what the state tells us to do for 1A, we run the risk of them giving us even less vaccine than they currently give us. So the only real solution to the quandary is for vaccine supply to increase dramatically, and hopefully that is going to be happening in the next weeks and months.
I think that is absolutely correct. And that is the only public comment. I would remind people who want to submit public comment for tomorrow evening's meeting, we do need your actual street, a name and a street address in order to be able to read it aloud in accordance with our policy. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ruther. Moving on to agenda item number 25. This calls for council comments. Anything that council wishes to share this morning? All right, this might be the quickest Tuesday meeting we've had in quite some time. So well done, crew. I know there's a lot on everybody's plates to try and continue with our efforts to keep folks safe. So it'll give us time to get back to that. If there's nothing further, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.